Hi, and welcome to another podcast with Hanaz Writers Limited. My name's Charlotte, and I'm a Year 2 teacher. I've had experience working in a nursery as well for children who are aged between 0 to 4 years old. Now, if you haven't heard any of these podcasts before, then be sure to check them out on Hanaz Writers YouTube and Spotify channels. In today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about punctuation and why it is important in your writing. Punctuation, and what is it? Now, when you write a story or a sentence, you probably remember being told by your teacher that you need to put a capital letter at the beginning of your sentence and a full stop at the end of your sentence. They probably then made you practice writing lots of different sentences, and you had to remember to include these things. And they were just small things, capital letter at the beginning, full stop at the end. And then after that, you're probably taught more punctuation marks like comma, which is put in between words to show lists of things such as beans, comma, carrots, and onion. Or the comma is used in between sentences when you're expanding your sentences to add in an extra clause or an extra noun phrase. And commas are just so versatile in that way. You can just use them when you need to. You might even remember being taught about the apostrophe when you put it at the top of a word in between the root word, and then the apostrophe S, and this shows the possession and an object belongs to a person, such as Peter's car. Or maybe you're showing that the apostrophe at the top can also mean two words have been stuck together to create a new shortened word, like or do not. So punctuation, why is it important? Especially in our writing, why do we need to learn these punctuation marks? Why do we need to learn where they go and what they're used for? There's actually a book called Eats, Shoots and Leaves. It's Eats, Shoots and Leaves. And it's by a lady called Lynne Truss. And it's one of those books that I remember because I saw it at my piano teacher's place one day. She had a copy of a book on her desk. And when I went to visit her, because at that time we had to go to her place and learn the piano, she had the book out and I was looking at it. And while I was waiting for my turn, I saw her and I was reading it. I was having a good old laugh and saying, actually quite a nice book. So then I was asking her what the book was about, and she was very happy to explain it to me. She went into detail about everything, really, about the importance of having punctuation in your writing. She seemed like the type of person that would probably get annoyed if people put the wrong punctuation in the wrong places, especially if they were writing something to her and they put the wrong thing. And she was talking about the book and how funny it is and how it's talking about and describing about the punctuation that's needed. She actually went into detail about the importance of having punctuation in your writing. She started talking about how it gives clear signs, I think she was saying, about what's happening. And she said it shows who's talking, what things belong to whom, and so on. And she kind of went into detail, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, and kind of wishing at that point I probably shouldn't have asked her about this book because she gave me a lecture on it, and I was like, oh, great. And I just wanted to point out that even the title of the book is a play on the effects of bad punctuation. It's called Eats, Shoots and Leaves. And on the front cover is written eats with a comma, shoots and leaves. So the phrasing is eats, shoots and leaves. And there's also on the front cover, sometimes you see a picture of a panda bear and he's on a ladder. And the panda bear is actually just on the ladder trying to get rid of that comma that's in between the words eats and shoots. So without the comma, it reads eats, shoots and leaves. So where the comma is placed in this, it's a very short phrase, 3 words, but where the comma is placed, you put it in the correct place or incorrect place, it can change the whole meaning of the phrase. So say the comma is there, you get eats, comma, shoots and leaves. And this implies that the panda is eating something, shooting something, and then leaving the place or wherever it's just been. Without the comma, eats, shoots and leaves, this implies that the panda eats shoots and leaves which are grown from a plant, or they're grown from plants. And then you can understand that this little phrase is about the panda and what the panda eats, or what the animal eats. So it's a very interesting book, but the problem is I never got the chance to read it myself. I saw it, I think after my teacher gave me a lecture, I just kind of oh, that's nice, great. And then I just decided, actually, I won't be reading this because it's a bit much. I was quite young at that time. But looking back on it now, the book is still available. If you Google it, if you look online, Eat, Shoots and Leaves by Liz Truss, sorry. Hang on, not Liz Truss. Eat, Shoots and Leaves by Lynne Truss. Then you can find it online and you can buy it from Amazon or eBay or any other kind of book website that offers it. Where I was going with this. So it's a very interesting book. Although I never got the chance to read it myself, they describe it as a hilarious read, and it shows why we should care about our punctuation. Why it is important that we learn the rules of how to use different types of punctuation marks at different times. Now, as a teacher myself, at this point, I am in the Year 2 class again this year, and we are teaching them the importance of capital letters, full stops. Then we're going to be teaching them about commas, quotation marks to put around speech. We're going to teach them about using the apostrophes in the right places, commas in the right places, where to put certain things, especially if you're hyphenating words, or where to put adjectives and power of 3 and things like that. Just the basic stuff that you're trying to teach a Year 2 child when they start to write their sentences or writing books. And in the previous podcast, I did talk about a 4-year-old, I think, who broke the Guinness World Record, Saeed, and he wrote his own book. He's only 4, he's only 5, and he wrote a book in 2023, and he became the world's youngest book author. So you can hear about that in my other podcast, so I won't go on about it now. And I was just thinking, the kids that are in my class now, they're like 6 years old, 7 years old. And some of them, a few of them, had the potential to write amazing stories. They get it. They can write their sentences. They add their adjectives in the right places. They write their sentences from beginning to end. They had a capital letter, full stop. They can write a really interesting sentence too. So it's not just boring like, oh, the cow went to eat the grass. They add the adjectives. So the beautiful cow sat in the field and they were eating their green grass. That's a really lovely sentence, isn't it? And it gives a reader a nice image, which is great. But some of the kids are still at that stage where they're just like, oh, a cow is eating grass. And it's just a very basic sentence. And it's got me thinking about punctuation. And why is it important? And what is the point? What is the purpose of teaching it? Why do we need it? So when writers are writing, they're writing their novels and their stories, they're adding these punctuation marks in. And it must be sometimes for them, it might be difficult to write things a certain way, or to write things in a funny way, or to write things in a way that they just want it to be said. So they've got the clear thought in their mind, I want it to be said like this. So the punctuation marks can actually help them to write what they want, because maybe they want a pause at a certain point in their sentence. Maybe they want emphasis on a certain word, so they make that word into capital letters, and when you read it, you're like, oh, that word is important, or that word is, or they put it in bold, so you know that is an important word. Or they put quotation marks around it, or they can put, what else can they put? They can use different ways, even the commas as well, putting the commas around it just so there's some extra information, adding that extra sentence in between their main sentence, just so you have that extra bit of information and you just know a little bit more. And so the punctuation marks can help you as well as a reader to read their work in a certain way. Something written with an exclamation mark, it makes it clear to you that what is being said, or this thing that's being written, is said importantly or is said with force. If they have to write a question in their work, then they put a question mark at the end and it shows that, hey, this is a question. People who are writing screenplays or scripts, they have to be written a certain way. They actually teach you how to write it. It's called script writing. And it's a certain way that is written to help actors and actresses understand how you want them to act, how you want them to say the words that you want them to say, how you want them to act out what is happening or what is being done. He picks it up angrily, or he picks it up with glee, or he picks it up with slowness and heavy tiredness. And it's just the way you have to write it so that they can see, oh, of course, when you're writing the screen directions, you must remember to put them in the brackets because the brackets show that this is an action and it is not something that needs to be said. And that helps the actor and actress to read through the script and say, oh, this needs to be acted. So when they're saying the words, they can remember the words, remember the action, and then try and put the two together. And that's how we get great actors and writers and script plays and so on. I think I'll be talking about that in another podcast, so don't worry about that just yet. So when writing a novel dialogue, it's important to keep the flow of the story going. Quotation marks are necessary in this case, as the reader needs to know who's speaking and when, especially if you have a lot of different characters and they're saying a lot of different things. If the text is a lot of dialogue, the writer needs to remember to give each speaker a new line, add quotation marks around what they say, because when you're reading it, you need to know, oh, this is being said. It's not like a thought. Thoughts might be in italics, or thoughts might be separate in a separate sentence. Then they can add the description. So the writer can add a description of how the things are said, and the reader and listener can then just read the words in that way. So he said, in a huff, oh God, or he rushed out to the store angrily, huffing and puffing. So it's like, so you kind of know what's going on. So the punctuation is important because you can have exclamation marks at the end of the words, or sounds, especially comics as well. When you read comic books, you see the word, especially when it's like a pow or a kapow, and then they have the exclamation marks. They have things in bold. They have things written in a certain scary way, or if it's a chiller or a thriller, or it's a funny bubble writing. Yeah, so you can actually have fun with what you write. You have the punctuation in a certain way, and people will read it and they can understand it because they know how to read it. They've learning it. If they're learning how to use the punctuation, they can learn it, or they've learned it, especially people who are adults, and then they can just read the work and just have a good old laugh and just enjoy what they're reading. So punctuation for me, I think it's important for us. Put it in your writing, add it where you can, especially in your writing. We need to know what punctuation marks exist. We need to know how they are used. And we need to know if they're being used incorrectly or put in the wrong places, because that is also not just wrong, but it can be used for jokes, funny puns, jokes for sure. And comedians are actually quite good at this. They place emphasis on different words when they are speaking. They give good timing and pause at certain places in their jokes, and it just makes their jokes work. I'll probably talk about this in another podcast as well, comedians and how they make the language work for them. And that's quite a funny thing when you think about it, because they must be sitting at home thinking of jokes and things to write. And they probably write things and they add emphasis on different words to make their joke either funnier or make sure the joke just makes people laugh. It's just about right. Oh, actually, this is a joke that will make people laugh. This is a joke that will get people thinking, oh, goodness, or shock them, or whatever it is that comedians do when they're writing their jokes and puns. So that's all for this podcast. Thank you very much for listening in, and let me know what's your take on punctuation. Do you think it's important? Do you think it's needed in our writing? Does it help to make our writing better or worse? What do you think? Leave your comments below. If you have enjoyed listening to this podcast and you would like to listen to more, please like and subscribe. You can find the button below. And you can definitely hear more podcasts with Hanaz Writers on their YouTube and Spotify channels. You can follow Hanaz Writers on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Their handle is at Hanaz Writers, or Their handle is at Hanaz.writers. Thank you very much for listening. I just realized at Hanaz.writers definitely has a dot in between the words and an at the beginning. Punctuation. Just wanted to emphasize on that. Anyway, thank you for listening, and until next time, bye.